Sergeant Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Welcome, everybody. This is another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Miles Lewis. This is the weekly, mostly live, mostly live weekly news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives, aka the Anomaly Institute. That's the Scientific Anomaly Institute. Thank you for joining us. It's been a while. Several weeks due to last month's monthly Anomaly Academy lecture happening on the same day as we usually do this live show, as we're doing now. 7 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Austin, Texas, center of the country, North America. Just north of the Gulf of Mexico. Your mileage may vary. Well, thank you for joining us. It's great to be back. Love to do the show. Love to talk about what's been catching my attention that I think you and the anomalists out there, all you fellow seekers, might find interesting. I know don't always get as wide a field of the breadth of anomalies as are covered by the collections in the Anomaly Archives, but tend to focus on UFOs, UAP, parapsychology, that sort of thing. But, you know, we love cryptozoology and other mysteries of science. Well, so I'm going to be not doing the third and final installment of the 2024 year-end review. We did 2 separate episodes, each about an hour long or longer, focusing on parts, a third, each of them, of last year. Boy, it's just, there's always so much going on. And last year was incredibly packed. But you can go to the anomalyarchives.org website, and we do have a directory there for all of the Anomaly Now episodes that have ever been. Of course, we launched Anomaly Now back in 2020, a few months or weeks before we launched our months-long, weeks-long Streamathon emergency fundraiser series. And that's when we first started doing this weekly live show. And we've taken hiatuses now and again. Gotta self-care and all that. But you can go to the individual webpage for tonight's episode. It'll have some links there. So we usually post the links that I talk about on the show the next day, along with the audio-only version of the podcast. And but right now, I went ahead and posted all the links that could have made up the topics for discussion covering September, October, November, December of 2024. But my goodness, there's just so much there. From top of the list there, James Webb Space Telescope spotted non-natural object moving towards Earth. Snopes, you know, you either trust it or you don't. or you go, maybe they're correct. Dismisses all that nonsense. We had some memoriams of other fellow Fortean anomalist cryptozoology and UFO seekers who passed last year. Lauren Coleman's brother, Jerry Coleman, and Dr. Robert Wood, and a whole treasure trove of other links and information. I highly recommend you go check it out. Of course, these at one point or another appeared in our Flipboard, but that thing is so huge, it can be really hard to get drilled down back there, which is why we post these links to the website. So besides links to information about our 7,000 plus book collection and our thousands of magazines and online links and digital files, we have individual pages for every episode of Anomaly Now, so that you can go back and find the links that were covered in those shows. And we also, on the main page, post other links of interest, including just caches of news links every month or so. Oh, where to begin? Well, I'm wanted to alert folks that we have started rotating our Anomaly Academy lecture series that's launched in June of 2024. We have posted the first one of those with our good friend Brent Rains, A Lifetime of Exploring the UFO Mystery and Its Psychic Components. That is now available for viewing by anybody over at our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Anomaly Archives, all one word. And we'll be slowly rotating those over. But, if you want to support the Anomaly Archives, you can go to patreon.com and patreon.com/Anomaly Archives, where we have all the information about the different tiers that we have available for people to support us. Anything helps. Or you can just sign up for the free account there and get all access to all the public stuff. We've got coming up next Wednesday, so there won't be another live show next Wednesday because we'll be featuring our good friend Aaron Gulyas. He'll be presenting Street Level Saucers, the Detroit Flying Saucer Club, the FBI, and the dawn of the UFO era. Really looking forward to that. That's again going to be next Wednesday, February 12th of this year at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that'll be available to certain tiers of supporter over at our Patreon. And of course, you over at our main webpage are links to all the past lectures, a list of all the people that we've had. Of course, last month we had Chris Rutkowski talking about abduction, transduction, and before that we featured a lot of other wonderful presentations that you might want to check out. So where are we now? Well, touching on a little bit of the late last year news stories. I know you've heard about it. How could you not have heard about the telepathy tapes? I know I started talking about it, I think back in October of 2024 on this program, and expressed how excited I was about it, how much I was enjoying it, how moving I found it was. And I may not have started expressing concerns right out the gate, but very shortly as I progressed through the first 10 episodes, definitely had some alarm bells going off. I had expressed my sense, and it's somewhat upfront about the fact that this is kind of the next generation of controversial, if not disgraced, technique called facilitated communication that was used to try to elicit a voice for the voiceless, for non-speakers, for people on the autism scale who seem to be nonverbal. That was back in the early 1990s when I first heard about that technique, and I may have mentioned how it reminded me of the Ouija board and this idea of people giving up to their unconscious or to the spirits or something, or to the other people on the Ouija board, the control of this interface, the planchette and the Ouija board. And I was interested to see a number of things. First of all, just how successful this thing has gone on to be. By the end of the year, this little podcast that could, very high production value podcast, had rocketed to the #1 position in podcast charts, including iTunes and Spotify, I think. This is pretty amazing considering the heavyweights they were going up against, and considering that they allegedly have had no paid advertising. So that in and of itself has been amazing. And just hearing how widespread people's interest and word of mouth discussion of this had gone. Well, we have a page for it over at the anomalyarchives.org website. You can find some links there to some of the skepticism about it. The best of which, and I highly recommend this, the skeptical article by Greg Taylor, the founder and main powerful house behind dailygrail.com. He's written this article called Telepathy Tapes, Overturning the Materialist Paradigm or the Reemergence of an Old Controversy. And he really does an excellent job of covering his concerns and his hopes about this, much in the same way I've been expressing, as far as my sense that there very likely are some disappointing explanations, fascinating though they would be if true, of these cases, but with still holding out the possibility that there is possibly some kind of psychic functioning happening here. Greg focuses on what's called the ideomotor effect, and goes into a description of the facilitated communication history. But like here, we'll read this. Firstly, the ideomotor effect. We now know that people can make small muscle movements unconsciously in reaction to information and stimuli. In response to seeing a source of pain, we might tense up or move slightly away. In response to a question, our muscles might betray hints to the answer. For example, stage magicians and mentalists take advantage of the ideomotor effect in using a technique known as muscle reading. Some have a stock trick of getting an audience member to hide something in the performance hall, which they then go about locating simply by holding the wrist of the person who hid the item in order to detect their unconscious muscle movements that betray the correct location. Some magicians have been even successful in citywide versions of this find and seek game. I intentionally mention these examples because it's important to understand that communication that at first glance seems magical and totally unexplainable to most of us can sometimes be explained through the ideomotor effect. Now, he goes on to do exactly what I tried to do myself, which was having paid the $10 to gain access to the video clips at the telepathytapes.com website and compare what we hear described in the audio-only podcast to the clips that make up some of the material that makes its way into the podcast. This is all for the greater production of a full-on audiovisual documentary, and seemingly also for the creation of some kind of institute or physical place to explore and do more experiments. And they are apparently moving forward with doing some more rigorous scientific investigations. But Greg Taylor goes on to break down each of the different children, parent, caregiver interactions in these experiments. He has taken some screenshots and blacked out the faces of the parents and the children to protect their privacy, because that apparently was a large part of the reason for putting this material behind a paywall, supposedly. But again, I just highly recommend you check this out. But the point that he raises is that so many of the experiments involve potential places where this ideomotor effect could be involved. And I myself, as I was hearing the description of these cases, was myself really worried that that's in fact what was going on. For example, in the pictures you see here, the stencil that the child is pointing to is not being held by the child, but being held by the parent, who does know the answer and could, and seemingly is probably slightly moving the spelling board to make it easier for the child to correctly touch the the intended letter. Now, again, I just want to stress that the author of this article, Greg, does go on to give some examples of some of the cases that he thinks might actually represent psychic functioning, and I think he does a really good job of expressing what people like myself have felt listening to this. You want this to be true. You want these children to have an internal life and a cognitive ability to be people beyond what some parents have been told by science and academics to the contrary, saying that there's nobody in there, that they are people and they are, children, but that they just don't have the cognitive life that you or I do. And you know how terrible that would be for any parent. And you hear it in the stories of these children. And that is one of the reasons I found this so very emotional and exciting. But the children's interests need to be protected, and there may be some other agendas at play here, but I will leave that to your own speculation. But again, I highly recommend dailygrail.com's article by Greg Taylor, Overturning the Materialist Paradigm or the Reemergence of an Old Controversy about the telepathy tapes. And that was something that really dominated the end of last year. So there's a little bit of our third and final year-end review of 2024. Now, for months, I've been wanting to draw your attention to some other things like these trailers that have dropped late last year. This trailer for a new documentary about the UFO contactees came out, and it's being produced by this company, this website, ideaswamp.com. It's been in production for, I think, maybe even 10 years. It's long overdue. So I really hope that they manage to get it out soon. And I've been wanting to show the trailer for that because I think you'll recognize some of the people in it, and it's kind of timely.
As one who knows that another war could utterly destroy this civilization, I wish I could say tonight that a lasting peace is in sight.
As we come out of World War II, we are in a new geopolitical situation.
There were deep-seated fears that the entire planet, were just going to go up in one huge atomic furnace. Suddenly the Space Brothers pop up and they give us a way out.
If you go back through the newspapers, there were lots of stories of weird things flying through the skies.
So I always believed as a young person that someday someone was going to come here and it would change everything. It would be the greatest thing that's ever happened to us.
Once we reinvented the atomic bomb, you could say a red light went off.
Contactees. They have met, talked to, or even ridden with visitors from outer space.
I was aboard a flying saucer in the Nevada desert and confronted with a lady captain.
I was inside of a ship about 18 feet in diameter.
And it occurred to him that he was in the presence of the occupant of the saucer craft.
They feel like they were given a mission, and obviously comes a big concern about our planet. What are we doing to it?
The Space Brothers, they looked angelic.
A lot of the encounters people had affected them on a religious level.
What is your answer to the people who are sure they're spaceships? If they insist that space vehicles exist, I say, fine, the burden of proof is on you.
The public interest has been far greater than any of us thought.
To people in charge, that was a subversive thing.
They realized there was a kind of cult activity here. Those spokespeople were definitely being monitored.
They said if I did not give the letter back, they'd find my bones bleached in the sun.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
Why haven't the FBI clapped you incommunicado for breaking secrets?
They know this information is going to get out eventually anyway, and what I say won't make any difference.
So this documentary, or maybe it's just the animation, is done by ideaswamp.com. They look like they specialize in computer animation, and obviously there's a lot of animation in there. But yeah, there's our good friend Greg Bishop and Aaron Gulyas, who, as we say, is going to be presenting next week for this month's Anomaly Academy Cadet tier and higher for our patrons. And of course, there's also footage there of the Reverend from the Blue Rose Ministries, contactee ministry, religious group. Of course, Stan Friedman, who's since passed away, and Nick Redfern, who used to live here in Texas but has now moved back to the UK, and Noe Torres and his co-writer, who are Texas residents down south and have been instrumental in the Edinburgh UFO festivals being held there. So really excited to see the results of that long endeavor towards a fun-looking contactee documentary. Moving right along. So over at Ontocalypse, Ontocalypse.com, that is the name of the production company behind this other trailer that I want to share with you. That's a new 3-part mini doc series that is streamable on, I believe, Amazon Prime and maybe Apple TV. Really enjoyed this. Here is that trailer.
What I saw that night, I can never forget it.
There was a connected feeling as if it could read my mind. So I waved up at it.
I just remember after that experience, I felt like my life was supposed to be lived a certain way, that effectively I was given a second chance.
People don't just experience it in flight. There are other experiences that they're not even reporting.
There is an extraordinary conversation going on about UFOs and technology and weapons, but not the experience, not the actual experience of being face to face with this.
I think when somebody sees a UFO or has an experience of one, it kind of forces you to confront what your belief systems are, how you feel about things, how you feel about other people, your place in the world, and how big or small it is.
A lot of the stigma that surrounds this subject has to do with the manufactured campaign, an institutionalized campaign to keep people from talking about it, especially scientists.
If you're confused and you're lost, it's because the people who do this are great at their jobs. They've been perfecting this for decades. They're not craftsmen of disinformation. They're artists.
The fact that we're not alone in the universe, it's paradigm shifting. It's huge. It could be the biggest story in human history. So why aren't more people talking about this?
We don't need to wait around for the government to give us the answers. The UFO phenomenon is part of our reality. It's not something that the government can lock up in an underground bunker somewhere and keep from us. It's everywhere, and it's happening all the time.
If you look at the history of humans, you're going to see that it's a history of engagement with non-human intelligence, because a lot of people believe in non-human intelligence.
I think it's very difficult to talk about the strange stuff, precisely because it's so strange.
We're living in a little corner of the world, just a little corner of it that we call reality. We need to turn off the lights, open the door, and walk out of this little house we live in, and then we're going to start to see something real.
So yeah, I really really enjoyed that 3-part series. It's very, it's similar to UFO documentaries in certain ways, but yeah, as I have complained plenty since 2017, and this refocused UAP ATIP threat assessment of the UFO phenomena, this over-reliance on military witnesses and technological interpretations and weaponization, theorizing of this phenomena. As much as I think that's all important and valid, I and others have long been saying, where is the discussion about the witnesses and the experiencers and the contact? And that is not to say that I am not skeptical of these supposed contact experiences, but they are such an integral part of the UFO phenomena that to not acknowledge them or to sideline them has been a disservice for everybody, especially those who've experienced the phenomenon. But it's a really well-produced and different than other documentaries, not just because of that focus on the experiencers and how much that hasn't been happening of late in UFO productions, but J. Christopher King is an experiencer and has been working with other experiencers for some time. Kelly Chase, I believe, is a probable graduate of Diana Walsh Pasulka's, and or at least a devotee of hers. And as you saw, Diana is in this as well. So is Greg Bishop. And I got to say, I hear a lot of Greg's perspective expressed in this documentary. And I don't just mean when he's speaking on camera. I think you'll hear his voice coming through some of the other producers of this documentary. And I think that's a good thing. And I highly recommend it. I very much enjoyed it. I was also really pleased to see Professor Stephen Finlay as he was interviewed and interviewing the East Texas African-American witness that you saw in those in that trailer. Very, very interesting, focusing in on that man's case. And it is a lifetime of synchronicity described by that gentleman, and I found it very, very fascinating. So maybe you'll enjoy it. Meanwhile, one of the things that you also saw there was this UFO witness, former military security officer Mario Woods. Over on the Anomaly Archives website, we have created this page for information about Mr. Woods, Mario Woods. I found him incredibly compelling and I immediately trusted him. There are some witnesses who and claims made by experiencers that I find, a little sus. Sometimes not, but I try to withhold my judgment, but I really, 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 really like this fellow and found what he had to say very interesting. And there is a exceptionally good interview and retelling of his experience to Jesse Michaels of American Alchemy. I know I've mentioned the American Alchemy, Jesse Michaels podcasts repeatedly on this show, and while I have some concerns about who's behind that program, they do some amazing mini documentaries and long form interviews, and this one does not disappoint. This interview with Mario Woods is excellent. He really, Jesse just lets Mario just go and go and go, very rarely interrupting him, and usually only to get maybe him to show him the drawings and so forth that he's done of his experiences. Fascinating case that involved his guarding a nuclear weapons launch site, and just very compelling, very it all again, and it brings back why this obsession with nuclear weapons. And anyway, highly recommend that interview among the many others that we link to on the Anomaly Archives page for Mario Woods. So you might want to check that out. All right, let's see if I can get to the other stuff here. So, what else? Yes, at the end, what else was dominating the news at the end of last year? What could it be? Those damn drones again? Yeah. Sorry, there's just no getting around this. This is going to have to, we're going to have to go over a little bit of this. And I really got to say, I think I was already saying this and others have said it, but yeah, 2024 was the year of the drone, and it is a year of UFOs. And in this case, those UFOs are often being described as drones. And in the past, historically, some UFOs were described as drones or mystery helicopters, that sort of thing, in times past, as a way of getting around issues related to this people not wanting to make that identification or that association with such a ridiculed area of study. Oops, did that get resized? It did. So over at the Anomaly Archives website, we have this very long, huge, ever-growing. Oops, I need to update the date there. It's definitely been updating it in February already. There's just so much back story and backlinks there, but I did want to yet again compliment the podcasters who host the Patterns Tell Stories show. That's Klaus and Garrett, and have really found their perspectives to be very interesting, and they're often turning me on to things that I may have missed. One of which was how back in December, let's see if I can find this, actually bring that back up here. Where is, oops, wrong. Excuse me, folks. Right, this guy, Dr. Paul Schwenneson, is an environmental historian and military affairs analyst. His major research interests are in the geopolitics of liberty. Now, I don't know much about him, but apparently he was one of the subject matter experts that testified at the Safeguarding the Homeland from Unmanned Aerial Systems. That's UAS, the other acronym used to describe drones. And yeah, again, thanks to Klaus of Patterns Tell Stories for drawing my attention to this. Among the documents you can find linked off of that page and on our website is his statement to his testimony to the committee there. But basically, and I've reproduced it on the page because it's pretty scary in its own right. And he basically, after describing his research on the drone warfare situation in Ukraine and how rapidly that is developing and how it has to develop fast to combat, the behemoth of the Soviet Russian military might. He describes three possible scenarios of where we are headed. He says the least likely, the U.S. Department of Defense will quickly integrate UAS technology and training from Ukraine into its mainstream operational level, frontline units. It would take an unprecedented level of commitment from all levels of the command structure and an extraordinary degree of political cooperation to shift the status quo. Yeah, we know that ain't going to happen. Most likely scenario, the U.S. will fall further and further behind the leading edge of UAS deployment and will only begin to respond in the aftermath of a crisis. My discussions with Capitol Hill legislators, frontline military leaders, defense analysts, and doctrine scholars led invariably to the same independent conclusion. The American defense procurement system is too vast and the regulatory frameworks too inscrutable to meaningfully adopt UAS capabilities into existing defense doctrine or practice. An event akin to Pearl Harbor or 9/11, with the physical destruction of tens of billions of dollars of hardware and a substantial loss of life, will be required to jumpstart the innovation cycle and break down the thickets of red tape which make initiative next to impossible. And so this leads him to what he described as the best case scenarios, as if none of these, that worst case, or most likely case sounds like the worst case. Best case, he says, conceivably this kind of depressing scenario can be avoided through a well-managed artificial crisis. Historical examples such as the famous sinking of the Ostfriesland show that it is sometimes possible to break entrenched paradigms by publicly demonstrating the current system's vulnerabilities. When understood by the right audiences, these demonstrations can shift doctrine development and tactical training in new and constructive ways, preferably before the lessons are learned the hard way. In other words, I don't know. To me, the New Jersey flap and the incursions at military bases kind of have the feeling of such a quote-unquote best case scenario, a possible staging of a demonstration of some technology's ability to basically, what if these had been dangerous, it could have been game over, maybe. I don't mean to overstate that or to create fear, but there was a lot of fear engendered by what was happening on the public civic level, by the people of New Jersey, and at the military level, at all these military bases and nuclear facilities and so forth. Now, there was something else that Klaus of Patterns Tell Stories has been talking about. He lives in New Jersey. He's been filming what he believes are drones that don't seem to show on radar. Says it's still going on, that it did seem to dip in activity certain periods of time, but it's kind of going back again. But he described what I've also heard described as the audition hypothesis. And I'm going to see if I can play this audio here. Ross Coulthard, in one of his January 15th reality check show on News Nation. It was a long episode called New UAP Whistleblower Describes Egg-Shaped Object. I think this is the first time he started talking about that soon to be featured alleged whistleblower, which we'll get to. And Trump pledges drone report, which we'll get to, and other aspects of the ongoing drone saga there in New Jersey. Now, I'm going to have to stop sharing and then reshare to make sure that the audio comes through. So bear with me, folks. There we go. And hopefully this will work. Let's see. So I believe this is Mine Hill Mayor Sam Morris, who gives his rendition of the audition theory.
That makes me actually relax a little bit, because it tells me that, of course, they know what it is. Of course, they know what's going on. And we all have our speculations. I have mine. But it makes you say, okay, they know. They're just not going to say. And you know,
what is your speculation? What do you speculate that it is?
So here's where I'm going to go out on the limb a little bit. I as much as I try very hard as a public official to keep an open mind. Right, you have to deal with your residents. The upper layers of government have things they cannot and will not tell you, and usually it's for our own good. Right? Maybe there's a security thing going on or something like that. Personally, I think this is some kind of an audition. When you look at the players that are out there in the commercial drone space and the military drone space, when you look what happened with U.S. drones in Ukraine. When you read articles that Ukraine is flying drones that are running on AI and fiber optics and these other things, and the U.S. military admits we can't really defend against them. But fortunately, it's not in our territory. I think you have, there's a Homeland Security bill passed on December 20th that gave that address Chinese chips in drones, and certain drone manufacturers have different issues. You wonder if that's legit or if people are being targeted. You know, you have a company, Archer Aviation in Connecticut, that is partnering with the big boys for billions of dollars. Suddenly their stock's up 5x, you know, since early December. What's going on that we don't know about? Endural, there's a company called Endural. The brother-in-law of the owner of that company, or the CEO of that company, is Matt Getz. You know, they have an office right across the street from the FBI. Look them up. It's a little storefront office. I think these people are all lobbying for drone contracts. They're pushing for expanded contracts, you know, billions of extra dollars in military spending. But the good thing about this is these guys are all, for the most part, on our side. When you go to, I think it's Endural's website, their splash page is the U.S. is behind, and we got to get our butts in gear and get caught up with the rest of the world. Well, that's in our benefit, right? That's in defense of Americans. So I think there's going to be huge drone contracts coming out, and I think these companies, as part of the bid packages, are going to have to be able to explain, hey, here's what our drones can do. Here's what how they did flying with AI and other technologies. When the state police in New Jersey say they pursued a drone and it went dark numerous times, you know, lots of government agencies. One of these things interfered with an air ambulance, you know, wouldn't let it land at Raritan Valley College. And the government says we're seeing things, you know, they're up to something. And, you know, you can say follow the money, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if these guys are working on our behalf. But there's a lot of money at stake. And I think.
So it's not definitive, but it is really interesting to me that we have, like, where is this? So Financial Times, FT.com, Palantir, and Endural joined forces with tech groups to bid for Pentagon contracts. As you heard the mayor there saying, this gentleman here, you see pictured in the background, I forget his name, but he is, I believe, related to, or at least by marriage, maybe, with Matt Gaetz. And so you've got Elon Musk, you've got Peter Thiel, these billionaires trying to get even more military contracts. It does make me wonder about this possibility of the quote unquote audition hypothesis. And, you know, something that I don't know that I've heard this mentioned. Now, obviously there was so much coverage of the drone New Jersey situation. But I don't know that I heard anybody talk about the fact that there are a lot of drone delivery companies that are developing their networks, their technology, with a few that are actively working. And this is a list that you can find on Google, drone delivery companies in the USA. And one of the ones that first really caught my attention is Zipline. Zipline has offices, and I believe it has operational drone delivery networks in Texas and New Jersey. And interestingly enough, you can go to the X Twitter page for its main CEO, I guess, Keller Ronaldo Clifton. And he's got tons of videos of their drones. And these are vertical takeoff and landing drones, but then they fly like airplanes. So they are fixed wing, but they also have a quadcopter set up. And they have a zip line. They drop a long package. Now, that's not a very good video footage of it, but let me switch over. So back on, I think this was, January 9th, he posted this almost 4-minute video of some of their night activities. And it just, so there's your drones up in the sky. I'm not sure if this is the Dallas or the Texas area network or the New Jersey one, but as another poster said, he says, he wrote, wrapping up another evening shift at Zipline's first New Jersey testing facility. Oh, yeah, it is New Jersey. The team has been scaling like crazy since we opened 60 days ago. This was January 9th, 60 days ago. So November, December, they were scaling up their operations. And as somebody says here, was your team heads down working on this the whole time? Did they get time to, turn on the news or scroll through X? And he responds, we've been slammed with engineering work and flight testing. What's going on? To which, of course, somebody says, I'm pretty sure you're trolling here. Not a good look. Yeah. So it really makes one wonder, were they, was that potentially one of the sources and of the drones? Was this, as we now hear? So, of course, we flash back to, I think December. Let me see where is this? So, yeah, so back in, quoting from the debrief, and I should have brought this up. Where is that? Yeah. Quoting from the debrief.com, the debrief.org, our military knows where they took off from, quote unquote, Trump said from his Mar-a-Lago home in December. They know where it came from and where it went, unquote. Similarly, while speaking to Republican governors on January 9th, Trump said he planned to issue, quote, a report on drones about one day into the administration, adding that he found it, quote, ridiculous that they are not telling you what's going on with the drones. So now, obviously, many people take anything Trump says with a chunk of salt. But he absolutely implied, without saying explicitly, that he knew what was going on, that the government knows what's going on. And there were indications that he had been in some briefings about what was going on. And of course, he made this claim that he was going to issue a report on the drones on day one. Well, it took some time later. And then before he had issued that report, he was asked yet again about them and seemingly gave this kind of, oh yeah, have somebody look into that kind of response. And then we get this very first press conference in the new administration. And as I was reading that quote from those quotes from the debrief.org, White House reignites mystery drone controversy with puzzling new statement. And you've probably heard by now, because it's been repeated, that this new press secretary said, reading allegedly Trump's specific words, quote, after research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. So here again, could this be in reference to a supposed military drone contract research project, or was this just the Zipline and other drone delivery companies scaling up their activity? And nobody, I get it, nobody wanted to put their head on the line and get called out for, authorizing this or allowing this when it was apparently, at least possibly, non-threatening. But the unknown is very threatening to people. And I'm sure people seeing drones that can hover, but that also fly like planes and look like miniature planes, but are still very large. Because if you go back again to the, let's see, there's the actual Zipline X Twitter page has a ton of footage. Here's one of their large drones right there. I can get that. I mean, I strongly suspect that that's a lot of what people were possibly seeing. But again, I don't mean to speak for those people, and but there's a ton of videos there. Anyway, it's very interesting, and it's good to know about this kind of technology. Again, it's here in Texas too. We're going to be seeing a lot more of this very, very soon. And drone warfare is the future, as terrifying as it is. And at the same time, it certainly conjures all the misidentification inherent in dealing with the UFO UAP phenomenon. Well, where was I going to go next? Right. So, man, there's just been a real lot of extraordinary, quote unquote, revelations, whistleblowers coming forward, that sort of thing. We've covered, sent out reminders to our audience, our Anomaly Archives audience members, about things like the back on the middle of January, there was what I termed a weird, wild weekend of UFO, quote unquote, disclosure, ? Where multiple UFO, UAP, extraterrestrial, alien contact related Reddit forum managers had bonded together for a series of lectures online, streamed through YouTube. And this was all, coming out at the same time as the big reveal of this alleged new whistleblower, Jacob Barber. As we were saying, Ross Coulthart has been rolling out his story on News Nation, and he's been featured elsewhere, including a really good. Oh, I'm not showing you the right thing. Right. So there was this AMA, and it was also on the heels of an amazing podcast that's produced by a NASA funded or affiliated company that's called I'm blocking. I'm totally blanking on it. And my screens are freezing up. What is it called? Ecosystemic Futures Podcast has featured people like Hal Puthoff and Leslie Kane, talking about reverse engineering of supposed alien technology and advanced physics concepts that could, lead to free energy and anti-gravitics. And so it's been just a wild ride. We've had a series of various whistleblowers or insiders coming forward, ranging from the Randy Anderson interviews featured by, again, Jesse Michaels of American Alchemy, and similarly with Jacob Barber now. All of these are featured in various long-form interviews that I highly recommend. I do, as I joked, feel it's a rather odd thing that suddenly the UFO community is focused on eggs, right? Egg-shaped UFO craft, UAP, at the same time that everybody's so focused on the ever-increasing price of eggs. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. But, other writers like Micah Hanks are, like me, very concerned about the red flags associated with this Jacob Barber character, his connection to Stephen Greer. But I do highly recommend the interview that Barber did, again, with Jesse Michaels. He goes into a lot of interesting things. He says that he is not one of David Grush's 40 witnesses. He talks about having formerly been actively seeking UFO whistleblowers in order to stop them from revealing classified information or to redirect them towards he and his group's efforts that have led him to seeking disclosure. And again, none of this is an endorsement of Jacob Barber's claims, but it's still a very interesting story. He seems like a very warm, friendly gentleman, but he has some very interesting tales to tell, not least of which is, besides the egg-shaped craft, he described seeing an octagon-shaped craft that made him believe the testimony of the other alleged whistleblower, that being Michael Herrera, who I think we've talked about on previous episodes. But yeah, you can go to Anomaly Archives. We've got pages for all these different people. There's one for Jacob Barber with links to these various interviews. His employer has now launched Skywatcher.ai, I think maybe the website, but they've got their own YouTube channel and their own video series where you can see their work. Before that was revealed, people were making hay about the fact that the company website was clearly owned by the same individual who is the founder of the famous SALT conference. Yes. So Green Street, quote unquote, Green Street also reported that Barber launched his own UFO organization, Skywatcher, in November, and his website is owned by Alex Klokas, the co-founder of the SALT conference, where UFO figures frequently speak to tech and financial elites. That was the place where, forget the former military fellow, just straight out said, there are ETs, NHIs, non-human intelligences. But now it's all out in the open. And in fact, that Alex Klokas is seen interviewed in this Skywatcher video. So good on them for, pulling down the veil on that. But there's a number of other people that you might find interesting that we link to, again, over on our website, Michael Herrera. But as I was saying, Barber describes many things, but he describes going to the Greer organized disclosure conference that happened like a week after the David Grush revelations, and says that he believed Michael Herrera because Herrera was describing the same kind of octagonal craft that Barber says he also saw. He describes how what he believes, what Barber believes was being transported. Herrera had said that he thought it was drugs, but then he started thinking that it may have been involved with human trafficking when he talked to Sean Ryan on his show. But Jacob Barber is basically suggesting in the interview with Jesse Michaels that craft was transporting quote unquote psionic children, and that there is some kind of psychic psionic children recruiting program that takes hires children from around the world to work in our government, our secret projects, as part of the psychic summoning of true NHI UAP UFOs. Wild stuff. He also talks about red teaming the DOPSR program that all government military personnel that have these top secret clearances have to go through in order to vet the stuff that they're going to talk about public. He talks about red teaming or gaming that system to try to determine whether what they can get through that process and into the public domain. While I don't know that in that Jesse Michaels interview, Jacob Barber specifically mentions this, he does. Oops, where is? In talking about that, he says it was they were doing it as they would submit like a chapter or two at a time to try to refine what they could get away with. And this really sounds like it may be this novel Sentinels of Ether, fictionalized story by quote unquote Alva Douglas, a pseudonym, which some people say that Michael Herrera wrote, some people say Jacob Barber wrote it, but you can find out links and information about that, of course, over at anomalyarchives.org. You can get at least, I think, the first 2 chapters in PDF form. Haven't had a chance to look into this myself yet, but there's just so much happening on all these different fronts. Let's see, what else was I going to say? We're already at the hour mark. Yeah, there's just so much going on. Of course, tickets are now on sale or have already gone and come and gone for this year's Rice University Archives of the Impossible Conference. Meanwhile, I have created for the Anomaly Archives a playlist for the Saul Foundation's 2024 conference. So you can go to the Anomaly Archives webpage and find a link there to our playlists for the 2024 conference. They're slowly releasing, uploading each lecture video from last year's conference. And let's see, what else? Oh, there's so much more I wanted to say. But obviously, I got to bring it to a close at some point. So let's just say that's it for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it. You know the routine, like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up thing and the bell and get notifications. Again, next week is going to be the presentation by Aaron Gulyas, Street Level Saucers, about the early UFO era and the FBI's involvement in investigating that. I have no doubt that'll be a fun and engaging presentation. So thank you all. Here is a last quick glimpse of that. All right. Good night.